Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and we've got another fun episode for you today. And today we are going to the edge. Yesterday we went to the stars and beyond. Today we're going to the edge. We're going to be talking about the Internet of Things, or IoT as we'll refer to it today, and edge networks, edge computing, edge everything, and how we are doing more and more processing at the edge. What does that mean? We're going to dive into that for you. Where are the opportunities? We're going to speak about that as well. The Internet of Things and connected devices we've been speaking about in some way, shape, or form for the past decade. Well, turns out here we come into the 2020 or the 20s, I should say. And we're looking at the Internet of Things more is a part of our lives than ever before, and looks like it's going to continue the way we all thought it would last decade. We're now finally here. But again, how does that apply to our lives as consumers? And also, furthermore, how does it apply in the workforce or in enterprise? We're going to be talking about all of that along with the areas of opportunity for you as investors to start looking at and you as entrepreneurs to start building in as well. Whether it's hardware, software, or infrastructure, we're here to speak about it. But before we get started, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you're liking what you hear, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, click the share button, and check out the archive to hear more about not just Edge and IoT, but all different types of technologies, industries, and regions around the world as we bring together the best and the brightest to share with you their thoughts and insights along with on-the-ground perspective of what's happening in these areas so you know where to start looking to make your bets and also where you may want to start building as well as entrepreneurs. And if you'd like to be on a show like today as an investor, reach out. We'd love to find the right spot for you and also entrepreneurs. What better way to kick off the year than joining us on the virtual stage that we have built for you here at VCTV for you to get up on and pitch us your company product or service, get real-time feedback and exposure for you and your company to our entire live audience. Reach out to the team and or myself and we'll find the right spot for you. Speaking of that team, a big thank you to the LoToken team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and I am very excited to introduce our guests today, two individuals who share the passion of the Internet of Things and connected devices with me. First and foremost, Ifran, welcome back to the show. A little intro and a little background.
Thanks, Kyle, and thanks to LA Token and also the audience for tuning in today. My name is Irfan. I'm the managing director of Irfan Holdings. I'm so excited to talk about today. It's a topic that's very near and dear to me, but also I'm excited because I'm in a panel with Gary, who also shares the same passion around the topic. So super excited to discuss this topic. Thank you.
Wonderful, and happy to have you as well. We've talked offline about a number of things in this industry. We've also done a great fireside chat around what's happening in Edge and IoT. So for the audience, check out the archive for that between Ifran and I as well. And second up, last but not least, the Grandmaster of Artificial Intelligence, a key player in this entire world of connected things, Gary Fowler. A little intro, a little background.
Great to be here, Kyle. Yeah, my name's Gary Fowler, and I'm an investor, serial entrepreneur. I've done 17 companies. I've had the pleasure of being involved in or co-founding 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce 20 months ago for $1.35 billion. AIVA is a company I formed 4.5 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. It's amazing, actually. It's hard to believe. So, and we're a dominant player in the AI HR tech space. I'm also investor, impact fund, seed fund. Privately, we invest money. I love artificial intelligence. I am the CEO, co-founder, and president of Get Shit Done Venture Studios. We are a premier AI global venture studios, curating companies throughout the world to use Silicon Valley as a port to the rest of the world. So, and I just wrote an article that just came out a few minutes ago on what happens when AI passes the processing power of the human brain. So I like to write, and we're going to just keep cranking it up. So keep those good ideas coming, Kyle and Efron. I love it.
Wonderful. And a pleasure to have you both here today. And, just to kind of reset the stage for us, I mean, the Internet of Things, again, we all share a passion for this. We've all been in this industry in one way, shape, or form over the last decade. It really kicked off in its earliest days with something called Google Glass. For those who may be tuning in for the first time and not have heard about it, we also had Fitbit, Jawbone, and some of these companies, Basis as well. These were early companies that were getting into this space in the earliest days of connected devices, which then led into a big wave around hardware and big companies starting to enter this market as well. So not just startups, but also corporates. Now, we saw this huge wave of the Internet of Things and the promise that it could be, but what we got is just a lot of devices with a few sensors and a lot of data that didn't really lead to anything. And then slowly but surely, we started to see usage of that data and the turn of actionable insights in its slightest form, and brought birth to the smart home assistants that we have. We started to begin to see how devices may communicate with one another, which then brought to life this area of edge and edge computing that we're talking about as well. And I'm skipping a lot of things, but just painting a quick picture. And would love to hear from both of you. What is getting you excited now that we're entering this next decade around Edge and IoT? Because the last decade was the beginning. Now, hopefully we're at the dawn or slightly past the dawn to be able to see this come true. So Ifran, let's start with you. I mean, what is the current state from your view of IoT and Edge as well?
Right. No, thanks, Kyle, for opening this topic. And of course, I'll pick the key word over here is data. And so I believe that we are at the dawn of this new decade. We're looking at, large scale adoption. I remember, this game, Tiberius Sun, and long back, you could see manufacturing being pretty much automated. And, what the situation that happened during the pandemic, it just pretty much told us, not only sophisticated industries that would use automated industry where machines communicate with each other, but every industry would need to move to that stage because of the risk it poses to people who are working in these places. And also at the same time, we're talking about efficiency. But most importantly, I think data is the key to it all. How we manage this data, how we store this data, what are the rules of using this data, because data privacy is going to be also a key factor over here. Now, machines would be communicating with each other. I mean, the other day, we've been speaking about decentralized finance. We were talking about how fintech is sweeping over the world because it was meant to happen because the system was broken. The same way, it's the same scenario when it comes to manufacturing processes as well as control of machines. We have a lot of machines, they're siloed, and they're not speaking with each other, they're redundant. And what it is that we're using, or burning a lot of our fuel to enable these devices, which are probably redundant. They could be optimized much better, because this decade is going to be about sustainability, because really there is no question, no alternative as to what's coming to us in the near future. Which means that we need to be more efficient, and the only way we can be more efficient is to have, not only manage what resources that we have, but also our devices, because our devices are, not just part of our life; it is our life as of right now. We're pretty much dependent on it, and also people need to shift to focus on other things that we will build on top of that. So really, Edge, what we always knew, or telemetry, what's the infrastructure, the bedrock that is going to lead to the next stages of development across the world. So, the topic is wide open. We can go down the rabbit hole, but would love to hear, what Gary has to say, and then, would love to pick up from there. Thanks.
Absolutely, and you're spot on too. I mean, here in last year in 2020, we also saw the release of Apple's latest version of their Apple Watch. We saw more applications come into the track and trace space. But on the Apple Watch side, and one thing that's I want to note there, apart from other devices, we also had Amazon's, I believe it's Pulse. I may be incorrect on that name, but we'll fact check that. We also had Amazon's device come out. But with Apple, one of the things that they started to introduce were new health-based sensors and data points that one did not necessarily have, or they had in many other devices. So they put it in one, and it gave you a little bit of actionable data in return that people were craving at a certain time. And so we'll come back to that here in just a moment. But Gary, to you, same question. What are you seeing as a current state that's happening here in Edge and IoT?
Well, the current state is that we got a whole lot of data that's being generated and we don't know what to do with it. Remember, I'm a country boy from Pennsylvania, right? And, so we look at the amount of data that's around us, and we need to understand not only how to interpret the data, but how to make some decisions based on that data. One is on a semi-supervised way, and then in an unsupervised way. And if we don't do it real soon, we're going to be inundated. Remember, I've said before, within our own personal cloud, there's about 300,000 items, which is bigger than the web in 1996. The challenge is in 5 years with the Internet of Things, that'll be 10 million items. We can't keep track of our own personal cloud. So, it's great to have the Apple Watches and the Fitbits and all the other things we have around us. The houses, the sensors in the house, Internet of Things, your roof is leaking, your car, it's just a lot. But we need to have intelligent assistants to help us understand what to do with it and to help us make decisions. So I just had Samir Sharma, who's the general manager of Intel's IoT worldwide, on my show, and we had a deep discussion. Think about, everything, right? So the smart cities, look at smart cities. Just one thing, if you look at a traffic light in a city, today they're only adjusted on the average of every 8 years. Well, traffic patterns change every second. So, think about keep it simple, stupid. Why don't we update it so that, hey, listen, there's a flow with traffic, the lights are changing. Think about sustainability and the less fuel that would be, in terms of fuel consumption, how would that have an impact? Look in buildings using the IoT and sensors. So there's a world of opportunity, but we better figure out what to do with the data, because we are generating an incredible amount, and we have not, it's great to generate it, but what do we do with it? And use it in a way that has a dramatic impact in a positive way, on our lives. And so it's happening. I see it. I hear about it. We've developed some of those technologies. When I first started EVA, we actually had developed some optimization. We moved to unsupervised AI. And so I started to actually go down through 3 years ago to see what kind of impact that would have. And it was very interesting, actually. The problem is nobody would buy it. They didn't want to spend money for it. People are inundated, right? The state of infobesity, but they want to spend money. So we need to come up with, and then these devices start to talk to one another. How can we start to make the decisions based on those multiple devices and extractions and correlations coming out of that, and then acting upon it? So it's incredible, actually. Think about it. All the smart pills, right? Imagine having smart pills in your body that monitor you all the time. Think about it. We go into a doctor once a year. Why in the world is that? It's like it should be, listen, we're going to course correct. If there's cancer in your body, it's a whole lot better getting it out before it starts to spread, metastasize. So it's encouraging, it's exciting, and the time is right, but we need to go down through and understand data. Data is going to rule our lives. Data is going to help us make better decisions. AI will help the data. We'll look at the data and make decisions for us. It'll start to be very hyper-personalized and customized, understanding the kind of things you need and want, and to be able to help you live longer, live better, and really optimize your life.
So let's go down the data rabbit hole for a second. I want to start with you, Gary, and then Efron, I'm going to come over to you around privacy. on this as well. So Gary, what's missing? Because I mean, data. We've had tons of data, right? And again, for the last decade, we didn't know what to do with it. That was one of the biggest issues in the bigger picture of IoT was we've collected all this data. How and what do we do with it, right? Even with vehicle to vehicle communications to, again, the smart cities aspect, as you mentioned. So we've seen a few pilots of this, and maybe that's the problem, is that we need to test before we go. But we've seen a few pilots where a car is driving and is able to communicate with a stoplight and be able to determine if it should stay green or if it should change due to other traffic patterns and sensors around. We're seeing plenty of sensors in logistics and supply chains. We're seeing this stuff happen, but it still feels so incredibly sluggish. And with all this data from the consumer side, what's missing to get us there? That data helps improve our lives, makes it more efficient versus just more data to overload our minds with.
Can you say 5G?
That's my next question. You're jumping ahead, but yes.
I mean, the situation is we didn't have the pipeline to get the data out. Then we didn't have the technology. This is like the chicken and egg. We didn't have the technology in place that could analyze that data. And we didn't have the AI sophistication that we have today. It's like there's a convening of all these technologies together, and they're happening at the same time. So finally, the AI is at the right level. 5G and now 6G is coming out to be able to get that data over faster. So we're finally at a point where it's happening so fast, Kyle. And then, as you know, quantum computing comes into the picture and starts to make incredible decisions. So we are at that stage now, and I'm encouraged by it, but we're not ready for it. I see that all over the place. Having been involved. I remember 4.5 years ago at VentureBeat, 4 years ago, I did a presentation of VentureBeat, and it was in the summer, and I had talked about predictive insights with artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it was like I think people loved it, but it was like, oh, I'm not worthy. And I went down through and, we came up with these models, and there was like 300 articles written about this presentation. But that's, how far. I mean, we hadn't made much progress at that point. We are starting, but we got to do more. We've got to invest in education. I had a conversation yesterday with the head of AI for the University of Florida, who just got a grant from NVIDIA for $25 million. We got to train people in artificial intelligence. So we got the resources. We don't have enough of a resource pool. It's a big problem, right? We need more people that know machine learning, neural networks, deep learning. They understand business at the same time, and we don't have it today. It's great to have data scientists, but it's not about the data. It's about what you do with the data.
Right. And that, Ifran, anything to add on to that? Thank you, Gary. Anything to add? But then also I want to talk to you a little bit about data privacy. And again, similar question is what's missing or what's needed or where are we going around data privacy?
Yeah, no, a great point that Gary mentioned. Education is key. Now, again, I'm gonna take a step back, and while we are talking about data privacy and all that, I want to talk about the aspect of the foundation of what we are trying to build, because really it comes down to education as to how we are going to build this new world on top of machines, the rules of the game. As we have seen and throughout centuries, whatever you build without thinking on top of it, you're creating another potential risky situation. And you look at with the internet, and now we are retracing ourselves back to become decentralized internet. Look at what happened very recently. Telegram announced they had 500 million users. A lot of people moving out of WhatsApp. I know a huge number of people are using Signal now. So we are retracing back because we understand that what we have created is, of course, we have advanced with the technology, but we also created a problem. Now with machines, again, I'm telling from the very beginning, before we build things on top of that, we have to decide the rules of the game. And this is where the data privacy will play a big part, because these machines are going to be with us. They're going to be part of us. They're going to be just like, like our family members, would have access to our personal lives. We have already seen interconnected devices, giving information on your health status, giving information around your driving pattern, giving you better and better option, but at the same time, making you, open to all sorts of exploitation. And this is key, because as people learn more and more about these, we're gonna be, in a situation, I'm personally aware about the major drive by some of the large players, who in the industry, in the tech industry, towards, interconnected devices, whether it's self-driving car, whether it's interconnected devices. The big names have been actively working on it, and we're going to see a lot of these devices being adopted by a lot of people. But at the same time, as I said, and as Gary mentioned, with those grants, it's an equal amount of responsibility for us as a society to educate ourselves, to understand these rules of the game, and what we are going to do, not, when it goes out of control and we're going to lose, a lot of people are going to be affected by it, because of this machines. So I always like to focus on that, before we build anything, because the philosophy is key towards, successful implementation of Edge and IoT.
Absolutely. And with that being said, I want to switch gears over to 5G in its impact. Gary mentioned this. I want to bring it up. So 5G, what is 5G's real impact when it comes to IoT and Edge? I mean, in past, we've talked about this being a game changer. I would love to hear from both of you what you see as the impact of 5G and potentially even 6G, as we know Samsung and others have been working on that next iteration, but let's just call it 5G in the future of connectivity here. So Irfan, let's start with you. 5G's impact on Edge and IoT devices.
Of course, so for starters, the bandwidth itself, it's going to enable so much, devices now that we can operate across, in different places. I think the other aspect of it is, and then again, the standards and protocols that's going to allow them to be all connected. And, I think a lot of people are trying to work on a universal protocol standard, that will enable, multiple devices to communicate with each other. But I think, 5G is a great step towards, what we're trying to build, right? I mean, it's just imagine, at the dawn of the last, century, when roads were being constructed so that cars could move across the world, right? And this is what 5G means, So at the dawn of this century, we're creating that highway that's going to enable data to move across the globe in ways that we could never imagine. And it's going to be more than any one of that. But apart from that, I think, 5G, of course, a lot of people, I would say people who are more conservative, are not very keen on some of the aspects of 5G. And you've seen certain rumors, that popped up last year, and a lot of people got affected because of that. However, I would debunk that, but to be honest, I mean, they had some grounds, and as I mentioned earlier, it's the rules of the game. You have to define them, and then of course, agriculture of future is going to be the most beneficiary, because everyone talks about a lot of things around manufacturing and all these things, but we have to think about our supply. We got to live, we got to eat. How that's going to be. You go to the most rural areas of the world, people don't want to be farmers anymore. People want to be engineers. People want to be rocket scientists. They want to work for Google. You go to the far-flung regions of the world, they would be saying the same thing. So the question is, and it is again that ideal question of economics, who's going to do the agricultural work? And agriculture machines are coming in, and 5G is going to really play a positive role in this sector, because at the end of the day, we got to ensure our supply of our food. And I see this as a major positive step towards securing our future for the better.
Absolutely, and not even to mention also the amount of satellites we have currently and what we're pushing towards. So I believe, and again, I'll fact check this, but we have about 2,500 satellites up in low orbit right now. Over the next few years, we're pushing that to grow into about 50,000, give or take. I believe Megan Crawford and I from Space Fund spoke about that. Ifran, you and I, and Arena as well from the Space Fund have spoken about this, which will enhance that internet connectivity. So another level of connectivity on top of 5G. So sorry, Gary, same question to you. 5G's impact, and feel free to bring in the satellites into that question or that answer as well.
Well, I mean, so the impact of 5G, it's like, where does it stop, right? It's like everywhere. So it's a farmer in the field. It's about the getting, as I said before, it's about having the sensors. So if we want to understand how much water's in the field, we want to understand what kind of nutrients, and then having those self-driving tractors that can go out with the right devices attached to be able to take care of it automatically. It's going to close the gap. It's right now, today, it's about how fast can we have that done? If I've got a self-driving car in car-to-car communications, imagine what that would do. We're not going to have accidents. Insurance companies are going to start to force us to have those kind of technologies in the car. And because we have the sensors, we've got the IoT, because we've got the peer-to-peer conversations between the cars, it's going to start reducing things. I wrote an article in November about 5G's impact. And it's not just 5G, now 6G, right? With the Chinese. We talked about that before. It's about getting that information to you faster so decisions can be made. So where does that impact? It impacts on our manufacturing floor, because it also gives you freedom, right? It used to be we have to be tethered to these wireless networks that we have, routers and that kind of thing. Now it gives you a chance to have it out in the field, because it gives you a much, much broader access to the network that we didn't have before. And so looking at it in medicine, looking in a hospital, when you get into a hospital room today, they have not traditionally connected devices in a hospital together. You've got your EKG, you got this device, you've got your ventilator, you've got all these devices, but one is they weren't connected, and two is what do you do with all the data, right? So it's back in 1991, I directly remember I was doing a project with Sun Microsystems, and I was put on a Spark station, and I said, we were talking about the web. I'll never forget this. And I said, can you do me a favor? They said, well, there's all these sites, you want to take a look at it. And I said to one of the engineers, do me a favor, I'm interested. Do we have any way to look at these? He said, no, but I can print it out for you. So I printed it out. I'll never forget, Kyle. It was this big, right? There's, a few thousand websites. And I said, this is disgusting. We can't manage. How are we going to manage all this information? And so the same situation now we've got the speeds, the capability to be able to access information and sensors anywhere. Now the situation is, how can we use that from one IoT sensor in the field to an IoT sensor that's in a dairy where they're processing the milk? And now we've got to have another requirement. We need more butter fat. Why don't you change the diet of the cow that's in the farm, and let's do it quickly? Well, what does 5G does? Gives us the ability to be able to have that sensor in a particular stall that relays it back over to the processing plant, the dairy processing facility that goes out to the grocery store. Right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I need a merchandise planning system said I need 7 more cartons of this or 7 more pallets of that. It goes back to the farm. It streamlines everything. So course in space, it's everywhere. Manufacturing, driverless cars. I mean, when I talk about communications between vehicles, think about it. What happens? It's how much part of the reason that we have accidents because we don't, well, part of the reason is people text, quite frankly. And so, we have having peer-to-peer between trucks, between cars, between lights. So it's just going to streamline everything. And the end of it is the artificial intelligence is going to come into it, the machine learning, to be able to help make those decisions for us. So it's a beautiful, beautiful world. We're laying now the framework, the infrastructure. That's what we're doing with 5G and IoT. And then on top of that, we need to figure out what we want to do with that data and how important it is to us. And it'll be hyper personalized for each of us. In the ultimate systems will be able to understand who you and I are and the kind of things that we want and make that for us in this beautiful, broad, global universe network.
Absolutely. I did a talk on this as well, a TED talk, painting this similar picture as you just did and what our lives will look like and how everything will be so interconnected and efficient. Because it is true and it is coming, and we're very fortunate, the three of us here, to see the inner workings of that from the infrastructure level all the way through the applications. And it is exciting. And I want to come to the areas of opportunity here in just a moment. But today is another high five to Maria in the background for her selection of today's topic on this particular subject today, because Google just completed their acquisition of FitBit today. And so Google, a company, again, I mentioned earlier, got into this space around Google Glass in its earliest days. And now here we come full circle around them acquiring FitBit, who has over 29 million active users, almost 30 million active users, a ton of that data that we spoke about, Gary. Would love to hear your thoughts on what this means in general for the industry, but for Google as well. I mean, we've seen Google have kind of a bumpy history, a rocky history, if you will, around hardware, and them acquiring such a prominent company, Fitbit being one of the leaders in the wearables and connected devices space. What does this mean for consumers? What does this mean for exactly what you've talked about? Infobesity, connected lives, more efficiency, artificial intelligence or smart assistants. How does this acquisition play into that, or how does it play against that, in your opinion?
Well, it really depends on, I mean, there's two ways to look at it, right? Google's going to have a lot more data about each and every one of us. Exactly. So, and I'm not saying they're going to do it, but it wouldn't take a rocket science to figure out, insurance companies would love to have that data, right? About who we are, what we're doing. And in a positive sense, we could have tailor-made insurance policies. You're right. I mean, in terms of Google Glass, I mean, that was a great opportunity, but because of privacy issues and some other things, it didn't come off. But this world, again, is about the data. Google understands that having that data is going to be critically important. And the person that has that data, it's like, King Solomon's temple. It's, or Fort Knox. It's where the gold is. And that's where decisions are going to be made. So Google's made the right decision with Fitbit. And again, they're probably best in the world at understanding how to analyze data, right? So you get Facebook, you got Google. I mean, that's what they're all about. So it's exciting times. Some people are nervous a little bit because of privacy concerns, right? Because now you can start to tie things together. Well, let's see, you're searching on this and your Fitbit says this, your Fitbit charge is saying that, your O2 levels are a little bit down. Your heart rate's a little bit up, let's tie it all together. So we got to come up with some policies to be able to address those kind of issues. Where does it end and who controls the data? Your data, you should be able to control how much data people have to be able to make decisions about you. And so that's really, we haven't really addressed it, although it's coming out a bit now. And some of the, it's current challenges where people are looking at, how much control does a Google or Facebook have on our lives to be able to show us the kind of things that they want us to see and not that we want to see, right? So it is. They're interesting and complex times, but part of the situation, we wanted these devices to make our lives better. We wanted to understand how many steps we take what our heart rate is. Look at the Apple Watch now, right? You can go down through and it can even alert you if you're going to, if you have a challenge with your heart, if you got fibrillations and those kind of things. I've heard cases where they've been able to go back through and alert people. So it's beautiful. It is preventive medicine, but again, it's about how do we use, how that data is going to be used.
Right. And that's, so Ifran, I want to come to you on the same question. Thank you, Gary. Today, the acquisition was completed between Google and Fitbit. So Google acquired Fitbit, which has over 29 million, almost 30 million active users, and now have brought that into their ecosystem. And my question is, what is the impact? Is it positive, or is it potentially, TBD and maybe negative on, the impact of where how this impacts the Internet of Things industry as a whole and us individually as well, now that Google has not just the hardware, but also the data as well.
Yeah, Kyle, that's a great point. And, obviously, the large incumbents today, I would say the technocrats today, have always been eyeing this opportunity to make acquisition around, all these industries, right? So specifically on the edge and the IoT industry, it's not just Google, Amazon's been tracking it for some time. Apple has been tracking some time. So we're going to see a whole lot of takeover of these, companies that are enabling the future of data and machines and communication. However, I'm gonna go again, take a step back and say, of course, this is gonna, heat up the industry, allow a lot of innovators to work, further to enhance the industry. But at the same time, I do not believe the incumbents have it in their culture to intake what is necessary for the next steps of the IoT or edge. So as I mentioned again and again, data would be the key. People are going to be more and more aware about what they want to give and what they don't want to give. And of course, the incumbents, want to take. They have been trying to make these attempts, so that they can have further control over you. And we're going to see that control go away sooner or later. And call me an idealist. I've been the guy who's been always vocal, at least for a decade, which is pretty long time in my career and my life. That a decentralization of internet, and of course when it comes to data, is the same thing. So I think we want to talk about more on the areas where we need to be working on, which is more on the energy consumption side. I've been the guy who's been vocal with engineer about how cumbersome the mesh networking system is, and how this is not going to enable the future of edge or IoT, because the energy consumption, the process of centralized cloud computing and processing back and forth, it's not the way forward. Of course, there have been some companies, who try to do that in the decentralized space. IOTA is one of them, right? So they've been trying to use that. Today we have Filecoin. They've been trying to also decentralize storage of data. But we're going to see more in this space, especially on the energy management side, because we're probably going to see us taking a step back into the original firmware, versions, and having devices that are more personalized, but also you're in control of it. So obviously, there are a lot of positive, but again and again, there are cautions that we gotta remember, because these are red flags, and these red flags, if we don't address them now, it's gonna create problems for us in the coming years.
Absolutely. And with that, I want to come to both of you around areas of opportunity. So one or two spots, and Ifran just laid out a few. So Gary, I want to start with you on this. One or two places when it comes to edge and IoT that if you're looking at investing in or building in, you would recommend here in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, so, I talk about AI all the time. So that really is a given. So anything around unsupervised AI, I would say smart cities, if you get a chance, you can check out my video I did with the general manager of IoT for Intel. So smart cities, I mean, smart cities are dumb. Cities are dumb, and not the politicians, but well, let's hope not anyhow. But the having red lights that are adjusted every 8 years when population demographic shifts regularly, it doesn't make any sense. So we talk about sustainability, buildings having sensors and for IoT and the networks. So now it's about building some of the infrastructure out. So I would say one is, how do we use 5G and 6G to be able to get that data over faster? How do we use edge in particular environments? Because that's, these are hybrid type systems. And how do we look at the data? We're going to generate an incredible amount of data. So all the devices, all the IoT is great, but if we can't make sense of that data and it doesn't have some type of a profound impact, it's worthless. So how do we do that? And, Kyle, you mentioned something else, and the flags go up. Many times when you say things, I follow up on the piece, but we need to understand who owns the data. So whose data is it, and how can I get reimbursed for data that's coming from me, or can I opt out to not give that data out if I don't want to? And what kind of impacts it going to have? Is it going to shut Google down if I don't, give them my data, or what is it? And these are areas we need to explore, but it's very interesting right now. Very interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. And Ifran, maybe one other area you haven't mentioned that you're excited about that, again, people should invest or build or look at getting into building here in 2021 as we look at Edge and IoT. And then we'll come for closing thoughts.
Thanks, Kyle. So I think, so for me, I see, I've been also avidly focused in developing our emerging economies, right? And these are, economies that's gonna do more widespread adoption of automated machines now, as I mentioned, as their economies are growing, as people are getting more and more educated. So we do see, as I mentioned, and the trend is changing, as I say, being, deployed in these countries, because again, at the end of the day, we're going to have a lot of more conversation of ethics, transparency in the supply chain, among other things. So deploying machines would be seen as a positive thing, but at the same time, we're going to see a lot of activities around machines communicating with each other, and their industry is becoming more and more efficient, moving from brick and mortar systems to a more digitized system. So of course, 5G will play a key part. And again, this is just like the beginning. I'm originally from Bangladesh. I remember, back in 1996 when the government opened up private companies to have as cell phone operators, and it changed the economy and the people forever. And this is exactly what's going to happen in the coming years in the emerging economy as 5G gets adopted and machine starts communicating with each other, unlocking trillions of dollars worth of potential.
Absolutely. And thank you, Ifran. And Gary, I want to come to you for closing thoughts and where you can be found online for those that want to continue the conversation with you around AI, Edge, and IoT, and even smart cities, as you've talked a lot about that today as well.
Yeah, so it's not just about the data, it's about what kind of decisions can be made on the data and how the artificial intelligence and machine learning can actually help us. So not smart, but intelligent assistants. We're going to get to a point of hyper personalization. So the companies that are out there, startups from around the world, look at it. How do I move from semi-supervised to unsupervised AI? And how do I use 5G to be able to enable it to make incredible decisions much faster? So people can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Gary Fowler. I have a lot of articles that I write about AI and quantum and all kinds of things, and entrepreneurship. So contact me. Happy to hear from you. Gary Fowler, GSD Venture Studios. So if you're looking to go global, let me know. Thanks, Kyle.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. Efron, same to you. Closing thoughts, anything else to add? And then, of course, where can everyone find you to continue the conversation, whether it be about energy and energy storage, whether it be about IoT, edge, blockchain, and the like as well?
Thanks. First of all, thanks, Kyle, and thanks, Gary. It was a really fun panel and conversation. Anyone can reach me through Twitter at Semper Irfan or over LinkedIn. And please also take the time to read some of the articles that I wrote. And these are things, research paper that I published about 2 years ago, both around machines, and control, as well as, how transformation can happen in emerging countries. It is my lifelong ambition to enable those economies as well as people, and I'm going to be always, looking forward towards development and always looking to help new developments around those sectors.
Wonderful. And Efron, Gary, thank you both so much for sharing your thoughts and insights around this. Again, we just touched the surface, as there's so much more to be had. And these two areas intersect with a lot of the other topics we cover here on VCTV. So we'll continue to discuss those day by day here on VCTV. So stay tuned, everybody. And if you like what you heard, first off, thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, click the share, check out the archive if you'd like to hear more from Efron and Gary. As again, I've done fireside chats with both of them here on VCTV around today's subject and some of those subcategories that we spoke about today, but also more episodes from all of our speakers here at VCTV as we again bring the best and the brightest to VCTV to share with you their thoughts and insights and on the ground perspective of different technologies, industries, and regions around the world. And if you would like to be on a show like today, reach out to the team and or myself, whether as an investor like Gary and Efron, or as an entrepreneur to pitch us your company, product, or service. We'd love to have you on either case here on VCTV with us and a part of the family as well. And a big thank you to the LaToken team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. To our audience, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me everywhere online at Kyle Ellicott, along with both of our speakers today on all social media. Do reach out. We'd love to continue the conversation and make sure you add context, whether that's where you heard us, what you want to continue the conversation about, and how we can best continue that conversation for maximum efficiency as well. With that, we'll be back here after a short little break to talk to you a little bit more on VCTV. Take care.